Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City at acpressmcgarry.com. He joins us right now on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Mike, welcome in. How you doing today?
Doing well, guys. How are you?
Doing all right. So, Mike, I said before you came on that for me, I felt like the Phillies almost looked like they were like jet lagged or hungover or, had senioritis or something was going on with them. And I almost feel like they're lucky, right, to get that win yesterday because the way they looked in the first 2 days, they didn't look great, Mike.
Yeah, well, I thought they fell prey to a bad bullpen on Friday night with Kirkring and Alvarado both struggling and both contributing to blowing a lead. So the Phillies easily could have took 2 of 3 from the Pittsburgh Pirates. But I would agree, right now the Phillies are in a middle of a, as I wrote today at PressofAC.com, a mini case of the summertime blues here. They've dropped the series to Oakland. They've dropped the series to Pittsburgh. These losses have kind of shown a couple of their weaknesses, and they'll look to get back on track. And against Minnesota, a 3-game series up there, and then the Guardians come to town for a potential World Series preview, and then it's the Yankees after them. So, rough schedule ahead for the Titans.
Hey, Mike, it's Nick. Josh and I, before you jumped on, we're talking about Christian Pache a little bit. What do you think the reason is he's been getting a lot of playing time here over the last couple of games before the All-Star break and now this past weekend as well? Do you think it's kind of a showcase maybe to move him at some point, or what do you think that is?
Yeah, possibly. I think more than anything, it says that they just do not trust Brandon Marsh to hit against left-handers at all. They've given Marsh an opportunity. Last time I looked, he was 7 for 48 against left-handers, so he's unplayable against left-handers. And you're going to put Pache out there. I do think, if they make a move for an outfielder, a right-handed hitting outfielder, which I would fully expect them to do before the July 30th trade deadline, that Christian Pache is going to be a guy who, 8 days from today probably won't be on the Philadelphia Phillies.
I certainly hope not because it feels like he's a huge waste. But, Mike, we looked it up earlier. The Phillies did get something for Mickey Moniak a couple of years ago. So, I mean, is it possible, Nick Earnshaw brought this up earlier, is it possible that Pache could just be like a throw-in for one of these deals coming up?
Yeah, absolutely. He could be a guy that, another team takes back. Absolutely. I just think he doesn't do enough for me to stay on the roster. I think Weston Wilson is a guy who has proven himself or has gotten an opportunity to play here a little bit and has, hit the ball. He can play left field. He has good speed. He has power. He can play some infield positions. Christian Pache, to me, is just too one-dimensional. And if he's not going to hit, I don't think you can carry him on your roster. So he would be the odd man out whenever they acquire the right-handed hitting outfielder that I believe they're going to get before the July 30th deadline.
Mike McGarry for the Press of Atlantic City joining us here on the Sports Bash. Josh Hittig, Nick Earnshaw filling in for Mike Gill here on 97.3 ESPN. Mike, it was a rough weekend for the Phillies' four best hitters. Schwarber, Turner, Harper, Bohm. I mean, they had a couple moments this weekend, but they all seemed to struggle for the majority of the weekend. Any concern about the Phillies coming, maybe are they just coming out of the All-Star break sluggish? Do you think that this team is coming back down to earth a little bit? What is your take on the Big Four struggling?
Yeah, I'm not concerned at all. I mean, keep in mind what they scored. They scored 6 runs yesterday. They scored 6 runs on Friday night. They should have won Friday night's game. If if Alvarado and Kirkring don't implode in that game, then they take 2 out of 3 from the Pirates, and we're probably having a different conversation right now than we are. So I'm not concerned about those guys. Harper had a home run yesterday. Turner's been great. Bohm's been great. Schwarber's been excellent. I'm not concerned about the Big Four. And like I said, they did score 6 runs on Friday night. They got 6 runs yesterday. If this team scores 5-6 runs, a major league team scores 5-6 runs, they should win the game. They just didn't win Friday night because of the bullpen.
Hey, Mike. Alvarado has an ERA right near 10 in the month of July right now. Do you think it would be best if Rob Thompson maybe took him out of those higher leverage situations, maybe used a Soto in the 8th or 9th inning and tried to get Alvarado back on his feet in maybe like the 6th and 7th type of innings?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you saw that yesterday, right? What he go in and he pitched pretty well yesterday, but the game was what, 4-0 or 5-0
Yeah.
when he went in the game. So it was not a leverage situation. I think you saw that yesterday. And you never, maybe Alvarado looked a lot better yesterday than he looked on Friday night. Like all relievers, he tends to blow hot and cold a little bit. So maybe yesterday's outing helped get him back on track. But yeah, you're absolutely correct there. And I think Rob Thompson started to do it yesterday.
Mike, you mentioned Alvarado. Left-handed hitters are 4 for 44 against him this year. So is it as simple as saying just only use him situationally moving forward? Is he put himself in a position, I don't want to say he relegated himself, but has he put himself in a position that he's really only good for one type of, a situation coming out of the bullpen moving forward?
Right. Well, a couple things there. Obviously, I think Alvarado's got good enough stuff to get lefties and righties out. So far this year, he has struggled with that, but he has remained very, very tough, as you just pointed out, against lefties. So at the very least, you're in a situation where if you acquire a bullpen guy and acquire a guy with some save experience that you can put at the back end of that bullpen, that allows you to move Alvarado up and face a tough pocket of lefties in the 6th inning or the 7th inning. So it makes the whole bullpen more effective. So, yeah, if they get, obviously perfect situation, Alvarado is lights out, can get righties and lefties out. But next best case, you get a closer, a guy who can replace Alvarado in that back end, and you move Alvarado up to where he can come in and get a couple of tough lefties out in the 6th inning, 7th inning, maybe even the 5th inning of a playoff game.
Mike, would you say, because all the rumors going around of them, targeting a reliever as well at the deadline along with a right-handed bat, do you think there's a preference whether they want to go lefty or righty? Mason Miller being a righty, Tanner Scott's name's been thrown out there. He's a lefty. Do you think there's a preference there at all?
Yeah, I don't think there's a preference. I just think they're looking for the most effective arm that they can get and a guy with closing experience. So I have a story up on PressOfAC.com where I take a look at some candidates who they can trade for. Boy, obviously Mason Miller is a very attractive guy. He'd be number one on my list. He's probably number one on everybody else's list. The other closers that are out there, your Tanner Scott, your Michael Kopech's, your Kyle Finnegans. Boy, those guys are okay, but I don't know if I feel great about those guys coming in to close the game out in, game 3 of the division series. So, they need some bullpen help. I'll be very interested to see what they do. Obviously, to me, Mason Miller, I have a lot of confidence in him, but do any of us feel comfortable if it's, Phillies 2, Braves 1, game 3 of the NLDS, and there's Kyle Finnegan jogging in from center field? I don't know about that. So, it'll be interesting to see what the Phillies do.
Press of Atlantic Mike McGarry joining us for a couple more here on 97.3 ESPN. Josh Hennig and Nick Earnshaw filling in for Mike Gill here on the Monday edition of the Sports Bash. Mike, if I could switch it up on you a little bit. Interesting weekend. Apparently, Joel Embiid is doing interviews with anyone who will talk to him as part of Team USA. Meanwhile, Team USA barely beat South Sudan. What is going on in the basketball world? This is supposed to be like a slow time for basketball, but yet Team USA is struggling to beat a country that I think half of our audience had no idea even existed. Meanwhile, Joel Embiid seems to be, he's talking with the New York Times, he's talking with ESPN Radio, he's talking with FS1. It's like they're putting out Joel to do all the talking for the team.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because I have watched some of these games basically, and you are right. I think South Sudan has only been a country for less than 20 years basically. So, and obviously they took Team USA right to the wire on, I guess that was Saturday. I just have a question for you guys. What do you think Joel Embiid has been doing since the Sixers lost to the Knicks? It doesn't look like he's been actually, doing some sprints or training. The guy looks woefully out of shape. And if you're a fan of the Philadelphia 76ers or you're the Philadelphia 76ers, right now, and you look at him and how he's playing and how he looks out there right now, I'd be a bit alarmed. I mean, here's a guy to me to really maximize his effectiveness and really lessen his potential for injury. He's a guy that's got to get really skinny and sort of lose weight, and he looks heavier and slower than ever in these games right now. So, yeah, I would be a little concerned if I was the Philadelphia 76ers, but by what I've seen of Joel Embiid, because he certainly doesn't look like, he's been in the gym a lot since the Sixers lost to the Knicks in the playoffs.
By the way, I will note it was 2011 that South Sudan officially declared its independence. So it's actually a little less than you thought, Mike.
Right. Well, there you go. They got some players, though. I tell you what,
they're coached by Will Ivey, former Sixer.
Exactly. And I believe it's a team built by Luol Deng, the former who played high school basketball in New Jersey and then went on to play for the Chicago Bulls and everything. So, yeah, I mean, look, these international games, I love the international basketball. I love watching the Olympic basketball. And sometimes you forget, like you just said, how good. Everybody's like, oh, South Sudan, this and that. They're NBA players and top college players on that roster. Having said that, should they still only lose to the United States by one? Well, the United States was down, I think, 18 at the half and came back in the second half and were actually up, 5 or 6 with about a minute to play. So, it's always, hard to remember that there's a lot of talent, around the world, and it's just not in the United States anymore. But my biggest takeaway is, boy, I would like to have seen Joel Embiid in shape and ready to go. And, boy, he looks neither right now.
Josh, Mike, I mean, you guys are omitting here. Mariel Shayok is on South Sudan. He was a former 76er. That guy had 24 points in that game on Saturday.
Maybe they should have kept him.
Yeah, maybe.
Every time I watch a basketball game, there's a guy out there that the Sixers had, and I say to myself, well, why didn't the Sixers keep this guy, like Drew Holiday? Why did the Sixers get rid of him? I mean, T.J. McConnell, why did the Sixers get rid of him? Isaiah Joe, why did the Sixers get rid of him? There's a lot of guys out there that seem to be playing for teams in key spots that at one point were on the Sixers, and the Sixers just turned around and said goodbye to.
Yeah, Shayok, a Delaware Blue Coat legend. But I want to ask you about him.
Legend?
Absolute legend, yeah. With Embiid, I got to mention here, there was a New York Times article that came out. He did an interview there. He talked about the Philly fans and wanting to end his career there. Do you think there was anything interesting from that article? He talked about being depressed after the injury. Was there any takeaways from that you had, Mike?
Well, that's the article where he said that he could have been the greatest of all time if it's not for the injuries. But, I just think it kind of showed where Joel Embiid's head is a little bit, and kind of, to me, how he has a little bit of a misperception. First of all, durability is, in order to be one of the greatest of all times, you have to be durable. So it's kind of like saying, I would have been one of the greatest of all times, except I couldn't shoot. Well, durability is a skill. And look at LeBron James is the number one example. LeBron James is the second or third best player of all time. At his height, I don't think he was as good as Michael Jordan, but LeBron's durability almost pushes him up the list. He's 40 years old and still playing, outstanding basketball. So durability is part of what makes the athlete great. And for Embiid to even say the greatest of all time, I mean, if you're going to list the greatest centers of all time, if he's healthy, is he in the top 5 of the greatest centers of all time? I mean, this is a guy that hasn't, been past the second round of the playoffs. So I just I'm very perplexed by Joel Embiid, both how he's looked on the court and his comments off the court. I just find him perplexing at this point.
He's Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. Follow him on Twitter, X at ACPressMcGarry. Check out all of his coverage of not just Philadelphia sports, but South Jersey high school sports during the high school season at pressofatlanticcity.com. Mike, appreciate you jumping on.